My number seven film is Carousel, and this is the great Rodgers and Hammerstein musical starring Gordon McRae and Shirley Jones. Now, you're probably thinking, why in the hell would you put Carousel above Wizard of Oz? And I am completely aware that The Wizard of Oz is a much better film than Carousel. Carousel is definitely flawed, but it is a sentimental favorite for me. When I was a little girl, my mom used to tape musicals for me on TV, which is where I think I originally fell in love with them. But on TCM, they played three movies back to back to back. It was The King and I, Carousel, and South Pacific. I guess it was like a Rodgers and Hammerstein marathon or something like that. But I would watch The King and I and Carousel over and over and over. And Carousel is probably my favorite of all three, definitely. And I think part of why I liked it so much was because it was a bit darker than a lot of the other musicals that Rodgers and Hammerstein had done. And for those of you who don't know, they are the masterminds behind great musicals like The King and I, The Sound of Music, Oklahoma. So, they have a wonderful track record, but they always said that Carousel was perhaps their favorite musical, and I really see where they're coming from. Yes, as I said before, it is flawed. The characters aren't quite developed like they should be in some areas. There's a very bizarre tonal shift between the darkness and the humor that to me does not quite gel. But there's a lot of good things too, and it allows me to overlook the flaws. And what I really like is the love story between Billy Bigelow and Shirley Jones's character. The story is about this guy, Billy Bigelow, who is a barker on a carousel, and he's a very masculine guy who's very brash, and he kind of gets by covering up his insecurities with prowess, like so many guys do. It's kind of a stereotype. But he meets this girl at Julie, and he falls in love with her, and she falls in love with him. And she is quite sensitive and feminine in many ways, but she's also a very strong and stubborn woman herself. I mean, she really has backbone, which I appreciate. But the two of them obviously love each other, but they can never quite say it in the way or express it in the way that they wish they could. And the relationship really ends up becoming very abusive, and ultimately quite tragic. And the ending is kind of sad, but hopeful at the same time. It's not, so sad that you're gonna, leave in tears or anything like that. But the theme behind Carousel, or the metaphor of the carousel, is kind of expressed in the lyrics. Longing to tell you, but afraid and shy. I let my golden chances pass me by. Round in circles I go, that sort of thing. And that's the whole thing, is the carousel going round in circles. These two characters are in love, but they can never quite say how they really feel. They can never say I love you until it's too late. And I think that's quite kind of interesting. A lot of musicals, particularly Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, aren't really willing to go there in the same way that I think this film did. Um, and I really appreciated that. And also the music. I have to mention the music, of course. It is just wonderful. I think some of the best work that the duo ever did for American musicals. It's just in that rousing Broadway tradition of the all-time American greats songbook. And I actually saw this musical on stage, and I saw it in its original form, the way Rodgers and Hammerstein had intended. And, the music is just as powerful as it is in the film. You've got songs like Never Walk Alone, which is perhaps the most famous of all songs in their catalog, or in the movie. And then there's the soliloquy, which is probably one of my favorites. I love that song. It's like a 7 or 8 minute piece done by Billy Bigelow, and it is like a theater or Broadway actor's dream. It is very, very difficult, but if you can nail it, then I mean, it's fireworks. I mean, you will get a standing ovation. When I saw it, the actor who performed that, everyone stood up and gave like a 2 3 minute standing ovation. It was really cool. And a lot of great actors that you may know have done it. I mean, Hugh Jackman, if you just go on YouTube and type in Hugh Jackman soliloquy, you can listen to that one. My personal favorite is the one in the movie done by Gordon McRae. You can hear Patrick Wilson doing it, as well as Frank Sinatra. So many different people have done it and offered their own interpretations of it. And then, of course, there's the first song in the movie that I love, which is If I Loved You, which kills me every time. It is a gorgeous, haunting tune. And also, as I mentioned before, I saw the show, the original show, but I have to say there are a lot of things, or choices that the movie made that I think are actually better than what the original musical did. They added a lot of ballet sequences that I think really add a lot. Like, for instance, in the sequence June is busting out all over, they added this whole ballet sequence, which is very similar to the sequence in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, the barnyard sequence or the barn dance sequence. But in my opinion, this one's even better. And there's a wonderful ballet towards the end of it, which has been long extended for the film, and it's just wonderful. It's the music is great, the choreography is great. So this is a really really interesting movie. And yes, it's flawed, and yes, it's very dated in a lot of ways. But if you're a fan of Rodgers and Hammerstein, or just classic American musicals, see this one, because I hope you won't be disappointed, because it's darker, it's a little bit tragic, but hopeful, very optimistic at the end of it. And my number 6 film is Top Hat, which came out in 1935. And this stars Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. This is one of many films that they made together back in the 30s and the 40s. I am a Fred Astaire junkie. Like, absolutely head over heels, in love, obsessed with Fred Astaire. And I mean, he's just one of my heroes. I am a huge promoter of the art of dance, as many know. I talk about it a lot. I love dance so much. And to me, he's one of the greatest dancers in a film ever. And certainly one of the great dancers of the 20th century. If you don't know who Fred Astaire is, and more and more the later we go on in time, less people know about him, and he's becoming sort of more forgotten. Look him up on YouTube right now, because you'll be amazed at what you see. He's a genius. He's a great musical person, wonderful talent. But he made a lot of musicals with Ginger Rogers, and the two of them were so famous back in the 30s. They were kind of like well, I don't want to say, because they weren't really a couple, but the way that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are famous right now. Well, they were kind of like that, but for the movies. Like, everyone just rushed to go see a movie with those two. They were a song and dance duo, made nothing but musicals. They were romantic. They were romantic leads, and just their chemistry is what makes them work so well. I mean, they just have this ability to add so much class and wit and cheekiness to everything. They're very funny, and they just have just an element of sophistication that I think a lot of musical romantic leads don't have. And I think what really sets them apart is that when you see musicals, so many of the love stories in them are just so wide-eyed and happy and just sunny, and it's really over the top to a point where it's just like sometimes it's kind of hilarious. But Fred and Ginger are very different. They play it almost like they know. It's like they're in on the joke. Like, they realize how ridiculous and silly the conventions of the musical are. It's like they're sitting there going, yes, we know this plot is ridiculous, but we're just going to play along with it for your amusement, for your entertainment. And there's something that's just really, to me, kind of surprising and interesting about that. They kind of are more subtle and pulled back, and they have an ease and a charisma about them that is just so great to watch. And watching them bounce off each other is just great. You don't see that kind of elevated, sophisticated dialogue anymore in movies, and that Hollywood glamour, certainly. But I think that Top Hat is one of the best films that they ever made, really. I think just in terms of the way it was put together, the writing in it is top notch. It's kind of, I always relate it to A Midsummer Night's Dream, because to me it's kind of similar in the way that it's a mistaken identity crisis. And, the story is, completely over the top, and just, it makes no sense, logistically no sense. But it's one of those things where you just kind of have to watch it and play along with it and realize that it's theatrical. And it's totally making fun of itself, too. It's cheeky, and there's so many great sexy innuendos that you kind of have to listen for to catch, especially for the 30s. And also the music catalog. The music in this movie is some of the best ever. And to think that this kind of music was like, these were like chart topping standards back in the day. You've got songs like Cheek to Cheek, Isn't It a Lovely Day, the song Top Hat, of course, and the Piccolino. No one knows that song, the Piccolino, but I love it. I mean, it's the final song that they do, this big dance number. And It's kind of a typical sort of jazzy tune, but it's done in this kind of robust and orchestral sort of way, and I love it. Now it is a little bit too catchy. Like once I start singing it, it's going to be stuck in my head all day. But I think it's great, and I'm surprised it's not as well known as some of the others. But anyway, if you like old Hollywood movies, you owe it to yourself to see this movie. And if you've never seen a Fred Astaire film or a Fred and Ginger movie, you need to see one because I mean, seriously, if you like musicals, I swear they will just change your look, the way you look at musicals or the way you look at movies in general. They are wonderful.